Today we're talking about employee-owned businesses. Last week, Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg set out the case for government encouraging this type of business model. In his speech at Mansion House, he quoted extensively from a report by Professors Ajay Bhalla, Joseph Lampel and Dr. Pushkar Jha, which looked at this area. Their year-long study looked at whether employee-owned businesses can deliver sustainable performance. I'm joined by CAS Professors Ajay Bhalla and Joseph Lampel now. So, first of all, what exactly is an employee-owned business?
There are various models, ownership models, which can determine what is actually called an employee-owned business. First one is where you see a variant where employees actually own directly the shares in the company. The other model is where actually employees own collectively shares within the company through trust. And the third one is, which is a hybrid model, which is more common, where we see individual ownership by employees and also collective ownership through the trust, which actually acts as a voice for employees through important decisions, for example, investment or expansion, or taking up the matters forward in terms of measuring performance of individuals. Variety of manufacturing sector or financial sector or services, we see this employee-owned business prevalent in the UK.
Can you give me some specific examples of companies with this business model?
The largest one, which is very well known, is John Lewis Partnership. And other than John Lewis Partnership, the examples of employee-owned businesses within the UK are there, but not that many. So to quote some, Arup, for example, or Mott MacDonald, or IEGA are the few ones. And there is an issue of what actually is truly an employee-owned business vis-a-vis what is actually calls itself an employee-owned business, something which is an issue to be borne in question.
So what advantages does this business model offer?
The main advantage of employee-owned business is motivation. Employee-owned businesses, the employees, because they own the company and also indirectly manage it. The employees are expected to have a higher level of commitment, motivation, when it comes to pushing the extra mile or pushing extra effort into developing new products, dealing with customers, putting up, if you wish, with difficult economic environments. So the motivation is crucial, given that in the post-industrial or the 21st century context.
Why don't we see a lot of employee-owned businesses in the UK?
Very few businesses start out as employee-owned businesses. Okay? Historically speaking, when one looks at most businesses, they're normally startups by either individual entrepreneurs. They are sometimes then transformed into family firms, then they go IPO, in other words, become shareholding corporations, etc. Most employee-owned businesses have to be converted somewhere along the line of this life cycle. It is the conversion process which really prevents most organizations from becoming employee-owned businesses.
And what we have also seen is the dominance of this shareholder model, which actually pays premium in terms of the return. And employee-owned businesses tend to be a stakeholder-driven model where greater ownership actually may not lead to greater sharing of revenues or profits by other shareholders, which is dominant in the capitalistic society.
Clearly, in terms of capital, obtaining capital externally from capital markets, employee-owned businesses, especially the ones part of conversion, often have difficulty communicating with capital markets who are accustomed to the traditional corporate shareholding model. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it presents a series of barriers to the increase in the proportion of employee-owned businesses in the UK economy and elsewhere.
And why is it that the government's so keen on this model?
The government is keen on it for several reasons. Okay. First of all, it's trying to fight the perception of unfairness which has become attached itself to the traditional corporate model in the last several years. There is a sense in which employee-owned businesses give a sense of an economy which is more, if you wish, a fair economy, an economy which is more rooted in the needs of employees, and beyond that, the customer. So that's number one. There's also good data to suggest that employee-owned businesses are more resilient. they're more resilient during hard times. In other words, because they are slightly more conservative during bubbles or booms and are less likely to go for quick profits and quick expansion, they are also more resilient over the long run. So for both those reasons of fairness, reasons of the fact that the economic model itself seems to be more resilient, it seems to perform very well in terms of profitability, in terms of value added to employee, and it fits very nicely with a high-skill knowledge economy. All those things together mean the government would like this model to increase in the private sector. Mm-hmm. Having said that, it's important to say that the government is also interested in seeing this model penetrate the public sector, where it is a halfway house between total public ownership and management and full privatization. The idea would be that there is a sense in which you can privatize this, you privatize certain services, but not by giving them to outside investors or primarily profitability motivated. You are handing over to employees who see profit as only one dimension among others being obviously resilience, survivability, sustainability, and service, and so forth.
And data also shows that this particular model is very successful in smaller to medium-sized businesses, especially where the size of the firm is below 75, where this knowledge-intensive part of the employee is very much highly valued and can be directly attributed to the performance of the firm.
How can the government achieve this vision?
Well, the government is trying to push employee ownership business agenda by looking at a variety of factors. Okay, first of all, there are regulatory factors in terms of tax regimes. Okay, tax regimes evolved over the past century and a half to primarily serve the needs of either completely sole ownership or family ownership and corporate ownership. Okay, employee ownership presents certain kind of tax complications, and the government obviously is going to look into trying to make it easier for employee-owned businesses to be run within the current tax regime. And even it's willing to add sweeteners to the tax advantage or disadvantage, if you wish, at this point that employee ownership businesses had. It's been doing it for quite a while. It's going to look in that as well. There is the other thing that they're obviously trying to do is make it easier for employee-owned businesses to convert, from non-employee to employee-owned businesses. And finally, I think this is in terms of what the government could do. Okay, it has to look at this, my view, personal view. It has to look in particular in the conversion process between non-employee-owned businesses that move into employee ownership. At this point, as I said, there are issues of capital, obtaining external capital to perform this. There is the issue of the premium which owners, private owners, forego when they push forward towards this kind of model. And my own view is the government should look very carefully at some sort of tax breaks for owners that can are basically letting go of certain kind of profits, and therefore maybe give an extra incentive for this sort of conversion from non-employee businesses to employee-owned businesses.